Thanks for tuning in to this broadcast of The Resilient Advisor. My name is Jay Coulter, and joining me today is Brad Johnson, who's the Vice President of Advisor Development at Advisors Excel. He hosts the popular podcast for financial advisors called the Elite Advisor Blueprint. And most recently, he's the creator of the Virtual Advisor Series, which is why I asked him on the show today. Brad, thanks for coming back on.
Glad to be here, Jay.
Well, I say coming back on because you came on last year. We did a podcast on really a controversial topic in my network, and that is the value of fixed indexed annuities. And you came on and laid out the value proposition for FIAs for a certain set of clients. And boy, I received a lot of positive feedback on that episode from folks who had not considered them in their arsenal tools, in their quiver, if you will, for working with clients. You did a great job on that podcast.
Thank you.
All right. So I want to frame this discussion with a story. When the pandemic first struck, people were nervous. They were scared. They didn't know what to do. You put out a tweet and you basically said, and I'm going to paraphrase it, I've built a virtual coaching business. Would there be any interest in the advisor community to learn how I did that or how you could build a non-brick and mortar advisory business and make that transition? And, I responded, Brad, it's a great idea. I'd help you promote it if you get it going. And then lo and behold, 2 weeks later, Brad Johnson gets stuff done. There's a community on Facebook. There are 30 or 40 advisors in there, and they're collaborating. And then, honestly, Brad, I started to feel a little bit uncomfortable because I have a consulting business working with financial advisors, and I didn't want to feel like I was, encroaching on a community that you have built. And I sent you a message to that effect. And your response, Brad, is why you're one of the top thought leaders in our industry. And I'm actually going to read it. So one of the lines in your response was, Jay, I think just serving advisors in there first will treat us all well in the long term. So don't be shy with posting if you can add value. Brad, that is servant leadership, especially in a time like we're going through right now.
Well, that's how I've basically built my whole business, Jay. And so that's been a theme long term that I've seen. If you show up and serve and add value first, and less about what's in it for me and more about what's in it for the end consumer, prospect, advisor, it's always paid back exponentially in the long term. So I think it's just good for advisors to think that way too. Think about clients first and everything else will kind of take care of itself.
And that's been the theme inside of this group. And normally when I have someone on the podcast, we try and add value to the advisors first and then work in the guest value proposition. And this is going to be different because we're going to work in the virtual advisors value proposition first, because A, it's a value to any advisor that's looking at virtual components to their business. And B, it's free. Brad, this is something that you and the team you've put together are just offering to any advisor that wants to look at this construct. Can we start with, tell me a little bit about the community and where it is today?
Yeah. So once again, it's one of those things, Jay, and this is a good thing from I think a good mindset for any advisor. I've been coaching independent financial advisors for almost 15 years now. And the upper echelon, they think about something. And when it's a great idea, they don't overthink it. It's kind of the ready, fire, aim. I guess my one disclaimer, if it involves compliance, overthink it, start there. But so here's what I saw. I saw a need. We're working with very, very high level advisors that had a marketing calendar laid out for the entire year, which oftentimes was 10, 20, 40, 50 public events to grow their firm. And overnight, that went up in smoke. And so everybody was scrambling. And it was kind of like, if Walmart tried to become Amazon overnight, how do I do that? And I'm fortunate, pretty much all of the coaching and consulting, like a Zoom type interface like we're on right now, that's basically how I've been coaching over the last 5-6 years since Zoom, at least since Zoom got on my radar. And I said, I'm by no means an expert, but I think there's some ideas I can share, some value I can add. And I also was fortunate because of the podcast, and I know you have one as well, where I had a pretty established network of thought leaders and entrepreneurs that were completely outside of our space. And from my experience, what I see in financial services is we lag about a decade when it comes to technology, I feel like. And so what I had was I had a lot of advisors that I was coaching hitting me up and they're like, hey, Joe advisor down the road just did his first webinar last week. He recommended this platform or, you know, this is how I should set appointments. What do you think? And I said, nothing against Joe, but I'd prefer to just go to somebody that's built their whole business on the internet for the last decade and find best in class resources and coaches and start there, not the guy that's experimenting down the road right along with you. So that was the thought process. And then I said, where can we have this conversation? Everybody's on Facebook. They've got private Facebook groups. So it made it super easy where the analogy I made. So Chris Smith, who's collaborated with me on the group, for those that have heard his podcast or stumbled across the Campfire Effect, which is his consulting business. We basically I made the analogy. I'm a Chiefs fan who will be the foreseeable future, the major sports defending champion for a while, at least. We've been, extended that because of all of the layoffs with live sports. But I said, what if we just look at this as like a digital Arrowhead Stadium, and except there's no ticket, there's no price for the ticket. You just walk right in, and let's just make it for the financial services community, whether you're an advisor, whether you're a marketing director, whether, somehow this is of interest to you. And then, just like the Rolling Stones, you put them on stage in the middle of this stadium and they fill it up. We'll just find best in class consultants. I'll have conversations just like we're having right now, Jay, where we're live streaming them, which I find is an added benefit to just podcasting it. And guess what? If the value's there, people will show up and they'll start a community and have a conversation. If it's not, it'll be a short-lived project. So that was the thought process. I really didn't overthink it. And what's crazy, I think within just a few short weeks, there's already 300 plus advisors, financial services people from the UK, Canada. I think we had our first Australian. Asia was just joined the group just a few days ago. So really quickly, it's crazy how when you have a digital platform like that, it can grow as long as you're adding value.
It's interesting that you use the Arrowhead Stadium example, because my first concern when I was in there was actually my only concern is if you get enough financial advisors together, there's sure to be snarky comments and people arguing back and forth in an unproductive way. Mm-hmm. You've done a great job of setting expectations for people who are in this free group that, hey, it is free and here's the model we're going to use to where you can add value. I don't know if you created this, but the ask, give, praise model has been incredibly effective. Tell listeners a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, so I actually stole that from Jason Gaynard, who runs a mastermind called Mastermind Talks with like 150 random entrepreneurs from all around the world. And he also has a private Facebook community. And then also, I'm trying to think, John Berghoff is another guy that kind of tweaked that model. But what I've found, it's no different than a conference room, right? If you go to a conference and there are no rules in the room, anything goes, right? If you join a digital room, same thing. And so you get what you tolerate. And you also get based on the rules that you introduce people. So a couple thoughts for advisors out there. Basically what I do, so inside of a private Facebook group, you can post something as an announcement. So the first thing I did, I'm just looking at mine right now on a different screen. I did a quick welcome video. It's literally, this is where it was set in a spare bedroom. That's now my pseudo office, because my real office is right next to homeschooling for the kids. So that was a little too noisy. So I did about a 2-minute video. I said, hey, here's why this group exists. Thanks for joining the conversation. By the way, in the announcements here, there's 2 or 3 posts that talk about rules of the road, how to get the most out of this group. And then basically went through the give, ask, praise model, exactly what that is. So give, if I can offer something to the group that adds value, just put a little give tag in front of it. If I'm asking a question, trying to figure out this virtual world, just ask it and let the group serve you. And then the praise one, I think, is the one that is missing out of a lot of groups, which is just show some love. Hey, when somebody has an idea that adds value to you, or they offer you a give and you go out and test it and it works, say, hey, that was a massive win. Thanks, Jay. I appreciate you live streaming this all over LinkedIn for me, right? Like that type of conversation. In fact, I'll probably throw a praise out to you just for making this conversation happen. So it's really not complicated. There's a few other things I can add too, but I know we've got a short amount of time here, so I'll keep it concise unless you want more.
Well, I just wanted listeners and viewers to know that this isn't the Wild West Facebook groups that you've joined that are built by financial advisor magazines or industry trade groups. These are serious financial advisors that are sharing best practices about what works in a digital transformation. And that's really the point I wanted to convey, that it's a very controlled environment in that sense, but there's incredibly high levels of content in there, both that you produce, Brad, and these outside thought leaders that you've brought in. For example, you had Pat Quinn come in and talk about how and why your presentation should be different in a live stream. And as someone fairly new to live streaming like myself, there's great quality in there.
Mm.
When you think about that interaction you had with Pat, I think it's fairly self-evident why it should be different. What was your biggest takeaway on how it should be different?
I mean, it was what, a 45-minute conversation. And it was, if you're taking notes and you actually care and want to get better, you would have had 3 to 4 pages of notes. I was fortunate. So I was introduced to Pat Quinn by Pete Vargas, who runs a company called Advance Your Reach. So he books stages for public events. I mean, he's booked events at the White House. Pat is who he brings in to actually deconstruct a thought leader type speech, right? A keynote presentation. And so I'd seen Pat do this. We brought him in at Advisors Excel to coach our advisors on how to communicate from stage, their message and their value, and how to get people to take action. And so I've seen Pat firsthand, and he can literally in like 5 minutes deconstruct and completely like change a presentation. So I wanted to get his feedback on, okay, you did this live event at Ruth's Chris. How does that change if we go on the webinar? And I don't know. There was all kinds of stuff. I think one of the biggest ones was how he framed the interaction with the audience, which I think a lot of people, when they do a webinar like this, they can't see people. So therefore they shy away or they forget to interact with the audience. And if you see people that are rock stars on Facebook Live, for example, they'll keep their eye and they'll be like, hey, Jay, welcome to the conversation. Thanks for joining. Hey, by the way, as everybody feeds in here, I'd love to know, where's everybody joining from? Just type your state, your city that you're from. Oh, Joe from Georgia. Cool. Thanks for joining. So now they're facilitating conversation. One of the things that Pat shared was create questions towards the beginning of your conversation, and conversations like this. Hey, as we look and we're navigating unforeseen situations, I mean, nobody saw this pandemic coming. Nobody saw the volatility that was coming, when at one point we had historically low unemployment and historically high returns, or I should say benchmarks in all of the indexes out there. Well, a few short months later, here we are. So when faced with unforeseen situations like this, are you the type of person that stands up and steps forward and says, I'm the type that's going to take action and control my own destiny? Or are you the type that says, I'm going to sit back and just see how things play out? Hey, in the chat, if you're listening in, are you, number one, are you take action? If you're a take action person, put take action in the chat. If you're a like sit back person, put sit back. I just love to see like, what's the audience's feedback there? Jay, what are you going to type if you're on one of those,
Yep,
right?
that's right.
So most of your audience is going to be a take action person. And then at the end, when you're doing a call to action for next steps, hey, if you want to look at options that you might have to help you navigate the unforeseen volatility that's out there today, if you were one of those people that early on said you were a take action person, this is your chance to take action. So now you've already preceded, they've typed it in. Now you're saying, okay, let's give you a chance to prove if you are a take action person. So that was a cool little framework that he shared just in that 45 minutes that I thought was absolutely amazing.
I mean, that was 45 minutes of gold as it relates to communicating digitally. And again, it's just something you're bringing to folks in the community absolutely free of charge. If you're serious about transforming your business. Another interview that you did was with Josh Lee on LinkedIn, and 3 great deliverables at the end. And I encourage listeners, we're not going to tell you what the deliverables were. Go join the group and grab them. That interview, though, had so much content in it. Some consultants and coaches out there would package up what he did and sell it.
Oh, yeah.
And so the fact that you could go and just as a member of the community, get that high quality content. Was there anything about Josh's, because you and I are both pretty prolific on LinkedIn. Did you learn something from that podcast?
Oh, well, the reason I had him on, another guy named John Broman runs a group called the Dad's Retreat, and Josh is in there as a dad, which number one, that tells you the caliber of person he is. He's trying to get better just in my opinion, the most important job we all have, parents. But within the first 5 minutes, well, were you familiar, Jay, SSI? Did you even know what that was?
I'd remembered it when I first started, but I had forgotten about it and quit paying attention to it.
Yeah. So for those that we're streaming on LinkedIn right now, right?
Yep.
So yeah, just Google LinkedIn SSI. And basically what Josh shared with me in like less than 5 minutes is LinkedIn is very algorithmically based when it comes to how your posts show up for other people, the content you create. And there's 4 main characteristics that they rank you on. And you can actually see what your LinkedIn ranking is when it comes to SSI. I think 100's the lowest or highest, 1's the lowest. And so he shows you, number 1, here are the rules to the game. But number 2, here's how to use those rules to the game to push your stuff up. And so really, because Jay, you and I both see it, we see a lot of advisors that just post random things with no method to the madness, really. And so it actually gives you a very simple framework. If you want to be a leader in LinkedIn in the financial services space, here's how to do it. And so I thought that was within like 2 minutes he shared that.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, right. I think that was and that's the other thing what I've found is what's really resonating with people. This is a tip for advisors out there. If you're just serving right now, it's less about you and more about, hey, we're in this unforeseen situation in humanity. Everybody's kind of in it together. I know that's overused and kind of becoming cliche right now, but it is accurate. We're all facing the same thing for the first time in human history. That's like kind of number 1 on the priority list. And testament to Josh, testament to Pat, testament to Chris Smith, who will be streaming tomorrow, David Bach I'll have on tomorrow. So far, everybody that's been on has actually joined the Facebook group. So Josh is in the Facebook group, Pat's in the Facebook group. Both of them actually got on after they streamed and answered questions, gave some value. Josh had 3 free PDF downloads that, like Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coaches, his client, paying him, I don't know how much, but it's not cheap. And he's just hopping in and serving. And so that's been really cool to see also how people outside of our community have just hopped in and said, I'm in. If I can help some people out there, let's do it. And you don't have to pay me or, take some rev share off some program I'm pitching. It's just been really cool to see how that's played out.
That's right. That's right. And that really speaks to the authenticity of the group. And I tell you what I experienced as well, Brad, is it's not just the thought leaders you're bringing in that are giving, it's the community that's adding comments. And specifically, and I don't know this advisor, but Benjamin Brandt, who is from Bismarck, North Dakota, posted something about holding office hours and letting people call in. And I had never heard of that idea before. And I thought, not only is there application for all financial advisors that their compliance department will allow it, but Brad, guys like you and I could execute on something like that. So just the community of sharing and adding value makes the cost of admission worth it. Since the cost is free, makes it even better. Podcast listeners, the website is thevirtualadvisorseries.com, thevirtualadvisorseries.com. If you want to multitask while you're listening to this episode, Brad, there are a couple other things in there that I just want you to touch on, please. You had something in there posted about 20 dials a day challenge, and you were leveraging a tool called SPAR. Was that one of the ideas that took off?
Well, it's taken off for those advisors. Yeah, I mean, how much longer do we have, Jay? Because I want to respect your time, but this is a great idea that advisors, if they're not doing it right now out there, they should be.
I'd love to keep going if you have time, Brad.
Yeah, I'm good, man. So one of the things I've seen, if you look at the new world we find ourselves in, everybody's running hard and fast to, how do I do a webinar? Okay, I was sending out direct mail. Now, how do I run Facebook ads to fill up these digital events and, have a virtual conversation like Jay and I are having right now? And what they're forgetting is they're kind of missing the boat, because there's a phase 1. To me, webinars are phase 2. Phase 1 is I've seen this twice now in my career. I saw it in 0809 and I'm seeing it now. And it's this need for certainty and reassurance. And even more so now, human connection, because everybody feels confined and like they're isolated and all alone. And so it's literally picking up the phone saying, hey, Jay, man, I was thinking of you this morning. How are you and the family? You guys getting along okay? You hanging in there? And then just listen.
Yep.
And it's the most powerful thing right now as an advisor, you don't have to go in with the cold calling script of hit bullet 1 through 5 and then pivot to an appointment. If you just go out and say, man, I was thinking of you, and you have that one-to-one human connection right now. I've seen offices just going through their existing client base who they always think they have all their assets until they realize they don't. And number two, going through that database of people that came in for a first or second. So they got face-to-face with you, but then life happened. They procrastinated. They went somewhere else. Those calls right now are turning into business and appointments over and over and over. And as long as you've got some version of Zoom or some digital way to have a conversation, you can do it, right? And one other added benefit, I'll get off my soapbox here in a second, Jay. Think about how many, so our advisors, typically their target demographic are retirees. Think about how many 65-year-olds knew what Zoom was 2 months ago. Nobody.
That's right.
You would have said Zoom and they would have been like, what? Are we getting in a car? Are we going somewhere fast? What's up? And now, case in point, my mother-in-law, actually, I think even, this Sunday, my mom's side of the family had a Zoom call, which, by the way, was chaos. There was 40 screens and it was just everybody talking over everybody. So don't do that. But there were 4 couples on there that were all 65 plus having a Zoom conversation with video on, with audio on. And so now what's happened, and I've heard it said that COVID-19 has accelerated technology like 10 years plus. That's what's happening. So now your target consumers know how to use the software that you need to be able to do this. And what I've really been talking about with a lot of offices is, don't think about why me, glass half full or glass half empty right now. Think about, what does this make possible? And 3, 4, 5 years from now, it might mean, guess what? You're running appointments on a beach with Wi-Fi with a fruity drink in your hand. How awesome would that be? So I don't know. Maybe I'm just wired to look through the positive lens of that's just kind of my personality, but I think there's a huge advantage out there for advisors that are taking this and running with it versus saying, guess I can't do anything for the next 6 months because my marketing calendar got blown up.
Yeah. So I don't feel like you were on your soapbox about calling people that you know at all. It's something that I have been trying to preach for a while pre-coronavirus. The problem is it was a bull market. And now that advisors are home and they have more free time, putting a system in place to get that done gets immediate results. And if you're not sure how to start, what I encourage advisors to do is to go to their LinkedIn profile, download all their contacts. They don't include the emails anymore, which makes it even better, and just peruse through who haven't you spoken to in a while that could use that phone call, Brad, that you just suggested. And A, you might help people and serve folks, which is beneficial. And B, it brings you back up to top of mind. It's, quite frankly, the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And I've also found one other thing. We're all humans. I mean, we all, somewhere as this played out, everybody had fear, uncertainty. Am I going to get this? Is a family member going to get this? That thought pattern has gone through every single human being's mind somewhere over the last month and a half, 2 months. And one of the things I found that's been really powerful, Jay, for our advisors is when they actually call out and connect with one of their clients. And they're like, Jay, thank God that I found you 6 months ago. And, here's my fixed income portion of the portfolio. I haven't had to think about that. The money keeps coming out. I'm good. Yes, the market's a little crazy over here, but that's why I have fixed income. And just reiterating exactly why and the purpose behind and the philosophy behind why you build a plan the way you do. I've seen my advisors, it actually empowers them. They're like, you know what? I do some pretty cool things. People do need me. I add value in this world. So it's almost like that morning pep talk you need, just because, you're navigating some really unforeseen situations right now. And so you need a little bit of self-care as an advisor as well. And I've seen that actually plays out once they get on some of these conversations and connect with their clients.
I agree. I've seen the exact same thing, Brad. So later this week, you have a gentleman named Cody Birch coming on for a live stream May 1st. What are you guys going to talk about?
So Cody's, number one, he's super entertaining. So if you just need a little comedic relief, I recommend tuning in. But so Cody's out of Colorado Springs. He's somewhere just outside of Denver in Colorado. Runs a company called Red Anchor Marketing. He's studied under a guy who I've actually had on the podcast, a guy named Nicholas Kuzmich, who runs Facebook ad campaigns for Fortune 500 companies. So I don't know exactly what Cody and I are going to get into, which is kind of what's always fun about these conversations. But he's really become an expert when it comes to online funnels. So for those of you out there that have used like ClickFunnels or some of those where basically here's how I create traffic digitally, I run Facebook ads. And then once they click and say, I need help there, now they're dropped into a funnel, which is typically a landing page where they're going to say, hey, that's of value to me. I want to sign up. In our industry, that's probably webinars right now or some sort of a free report. Now they're in your database, your CRM, to where now you can invite them to a future event. You can invite them in for an appointment. So a lot of funnels, it's kind of like dating. Somebody enters the room. You don't say, hey, want to get married? You say, hey, let's go on a first date. Let's get to know each other. Okay, let's go on a second date, a third date. And how do you automate that process to eventually, hey, will you marry me? Will you come to that appointment? And so he's going to go through he's got some great frameworks that simplify that, whether you end up hiring somebody like him or just want to do the do-it-yourself version.
So I have been spammed with marketing around buying a course, buying a book, attending a paid webinar to learn how to do exactly what you and Cody are going to talk about. Advisors, if you've ever had an interest in researching ClickFunnels, digital ad campaigns, join this virtual advisor group. Again, the website is thevirtualadvisorseries.com. From there, you'll be taken to you'll have, well, actually, Brad, why don't you walk folks what they find on the website that I have up on the screen and then what the Facebook entry looks like.
Yeah, cool. So the virtualadvisorseries.com, I just went out and bought that about 2 weeks ago, just because I figured it'd be easier to send somebody someplace where they could just see it. So on that website are basically episodes. So past episodes, you can see them there with Pat Quinn, with Joshua B. Lee. We're just adding a schedule of upcoming. So you'll be able to see the schedule of upcoming. If you put your name and email in, basically you can get emailed every time we have a live that's getting ready to come up. So I've been live streaming on Twitter, Facebook, soon to be LinkedIn, hopefully. So Jay, if you have any connections there, let me know. And then you've got an option where you can join the private Facebook group, which is just called the Virtual Advisor. So even if you're on Facebook and just search the Virtual Advisor, should pop that up. It is a private group, so you have to be accepted in. We've got a couple questions just that we ask you, nothing too complicated, just to make sure we facilitate the right crowd that's in there that's going to add value. And yeah, other than that, the website's pretty simple. So it's just, here are the past episodes, here are the schedule of upcoming. And if you want to join the community and conversation, it'll take you right to the private Facebook group.
Excellent. thevirtualadvisorseries.com. Brad, I appreciate you coming back on.
Glad to be here, Jay. It was fun. Thank you.